There is a quiet war unfolding not in the streets or across nations, but within the hearts of those chosen by God. It's a war waged through weariness, disconnection, and the slow erosion of clarity. No bullets, no fire, just noise. Endless, constant noise that drowns out the whisper of heaven. And perhaps the greatest danger of all is this: many chosen ones don't even realize they're under spiritual attack because the world has convinced them that constant company means success and stillness means failure. But what if the very thing you've been avoiding, silence, isn't your enemy at all, but your sanctuary? What if the heaviness you feel in crowded rooms, the invisible wall between you and others, isn't a flaw in your personality, but a sign of divine separation? You were never meant to be consumed by the crowd. The ones called by God are often called away before they're called forward. And here's the truth that many never hear. There are sacred breakthroughs that will never be birthed in chaos. They are conceived in quiet. If you continue to resist this season of divine solitude, you may unknowingly delay the very destiny heaven has prepared for you. This is not just a motivational message. It is a spiritual unveiling for the weary, the set apart, the ones who have grown tired of trying to fit in where they were never meant to belong. If you've been asking, why do I feel so detached from everything around me? Or why does my soul crave silence when others crave attention? Then this message is your answer. You'll hear the story of Elijah, not the prophet, but a modern-day man whose quiet season became the foundation for his greatest calling. And along the way, you'll learn to stop fearing isolation and start recognizing it as holy preparation. C.S. Lewis wrote in The Problem of Pain, "God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pains. It is his megaphone to rouse a deaf world." Maybe the ache you feel right now, the silence, the solitude, is not a punishment at all. Maybe it's God raising his voice in a language only your soul can hear. And so, before we go further, take a breath. Let go of the need to explain your solitude to those who were never meant to understand it, because what we're about to explore is not simply why you feel alone. It's why that aloneness might be the holiest ground you've ever stood on. Now, let us step into the first revelation. The misunderstood pull of being set apart. It often begins quietly, not with a thunderous revelation or a burning bush, but with something far less dramatic, far more unsettling. A growing discomfort in places that once felt familiar. A deep fatigue after conversations that used to energize you. An inexplicable desire to withdraw, to be alone, to escape even from those you love. At first, you might call it burnout, fatigue, emotional distance. You may blame yourself, thinking, why can't I connect like I used to? But this is no ordinary weariness. It is the symptom of being spiritually out of alignment with environments you've outgrown. Your soul, which was once content with surface-level interactions, has begun to hunger for something eternal, and that hunger cannot be satisfied in shallow waters. When God marks you, he begins to separate you, not because you're better than others, but because what he has deposited within you can no longer thrive in noise, compromise, or distraction. You may still smile in rooms full of people, but inside, there's a stirring you can't ignore, a quiet knowing that says, I don't belong here anymore. This is the misunderstood pull, the sacred discomfort, the divine discontent that draws you out of the familiar and into the unknown. And because it doesn't come with clear instructions, it often feels like a loss. Friendships begin to fade, invitations stop coming, you might even begin to feel invisible. But invisibility in the world is often visibility in the spirit. God is removing your camouflage not to expose you, but to prepare you. It's important to understand. Being set apart is not a punishment, it's a preservation. God is protecting the oil within you. And just as fine wine is never stored in open spaces, the anointing on your life is not meant to be poured out indiscriminately. The pull to solitude is a sign that heaven is drawing boundaries around your purpose. And yet, this pull often leaves you with more questions than answers. You may ask, why now? Or why me? But the truth is, your spirit recognized the shift long before your mind did. The separation you feel is not accidental. It's orchestration. You are being pulled not away from people, but toward God. And as we move forward, it's time to look at the one who modeled this perfectly, the one who could command crowds, but chose quiet hills. Let's now turn our gaze toward Jesus and the divine blueprint He left for every chosen soul longing for clarity in the midst of separation. If we truly desire to understand the strange ache of being pulled away from people, the sacred loneliness that chosen ones so often feel, we must look to the one who felt it first and felt it fully. Jesus Christ, the Son of God, who walked in perfect intimacy with the Father, also walked alone more often than we realize. Though multitudes followed him, though miracles surrounded him, and though his presence drew thousands, he regularly disappeared from the noise, not because he was overwhelmed, but because he was aligned. He knew that the crowd could celebrate him one day and crucify him the next. And he understood that clarity, power, and obedience are never cultivated in the chaos of applause, but in the secret quiet of communion. Time after time, Scripture records that Jesus withdrew. After feeding 5,000, he didn't linger for recognition, he climbed the mountain to pray. After healing the masses, he didn't stay to bask in admiration. He left for the wilderness. He didn't stay where he was needed most. He went where he was required most, into the presence of the Father, because even Jesus, fully God yet fully man, needed solitude, not wanted needed. Because his mission was eternal, and eternal things require eternal preparation. We often think of solitude as a passive place, a waiting room, an in-between, but Jesus treated it as a sanctuarious space where heaven's frequency drowned out the static of the world. There, away from the opinions and expectations of others, he could hear clearly, see clearly, and move with divine precision. And perhaps the most powerful image of all, the Garden of Gethsemane. In his most agonizing hour, as the cross loomed near and betrayal was moments away, he invited his closest friends to stay near, to pray with him, to share the burden, just for a while. But they couldn't. They slept. Not once, but 3 times. And so, he did what all chosen ones must eventually do. He went further, alone. Not because he didn't love them, but because they weren't called to carry what only he was born to bear. There are moments in your life when even those who love you cannot walk the last stretch. Not because they've failed you, but because the calling on your life is weighty, and weight creates separation. Jesus knew that. And he walked that lonely road willingly. C.S. Lewis captured this truth beautifully in Mere Christianity, writing, "We may ignore, but we can nowhere evade, the presence of God. The world is crowded with him. He walks everywhere incognito." Jesus recognized the hiddenness of God not as absence, but as intimacy. He saw the quiet not as emptiness, but as fullness in disguise. And in doing so, he taught us that solitude is not a sign of failure, but of focus. It is not the absence of activity, but the presence of alignment. Yet the modern world rebels against this. We are trained to stay visible, to post, to speak, to respond, to fear quiet as if it were death. But Jesus, the very embodiment of divine purpose, chose the hills, the wilderness, and the midnight garden over the crowd. He chose silence when he could have demanded attention. He chose the Father's voice when he could have answered the world's praise. And if he needed to withdraw to complete his assignment, what makes us think we can complete ours without doing the same? This is not about isolation for the sake of escape. It's about solitude for the sake of obedience. Still, solitude isn't only about what you receive from God. Often it is about what he begins to remove. Because in order to rise, there are things you must leave behind. And that is where we go next. There is a sacred truth rarely spoken, but every chosen one comes to know it in time. Elevation always requires elimination. God never calls a soul upward without first pruning what can no longer grow at higher altitudes. When he draws you into solitude, it isn't only to speak it, is also to remove, to strip away what clings to you but no longer feeds you, to peel off the relationships, mindsets, and patterns that once served you, but now silently sabotage what he's building in you. This is the painful part of the process, not the quiet but the cutting, because we rarely realize how much of our identity has become entangled in who we've been around, in the opinions that shaped us, in the expectations we've absorbed. And so, when God begins to separate you not just spiritually, but relationally, it can feel like loss, like abandonment, like punishment, but it is none of those things. It is love. It is the loving hand of a father who knows you cannot carry dead branches into a season of fruitfulness. It is the fierce tenderness of the gardener who sees what you cannot, that growth requires separation. That not everyone who walked with you in the last season is meant to enter the next. Some people were only meant to be scaffolding, not the foundation. As Jesus said in John 15:2, "Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away, and every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes, that it may bear more fruit." Notice that even the fruitful branches are pruned, not because they failed, but because they are loved. You are not being cut off, you are being refined. You are not being isolated, you are being prepared. And in this pruning, you will begin to notice the subtle shedding. Conversations that once sparked your interest will now feel hollow. Invitations will come, and you'll feel no urge to go. You will outgrow atmospheres before you even understand why, and that's okay. Growth is not always loud. Sometimes, it simply means your spirit no longer finds rest where it once did. But this is also where the enemy will attempt to confuse you. He will whisper lies. You're too different now. No one understands you. You're losing everything. But listen closely, what you're losing is only what can't follow you into where you're going. God is simplifying your environment so he can deepen your roots. He is removing the unnecessary so you can walk in clarity. And it is in this holy trimming that space is made for new vision, new assignments, new oil. So do not mourn what is being removed. Bless it, release it, and trust the hands that are pruning you. Because when God prepares to reveal something great through your life, he always begins by cutting back the things that do not serve your destiny. And when you embrace this process, what once felt like subtraction begins to feel like freedom. Now that you understand the beauty and necessity of this removal, it's time to meet someone who walked through it firsthand. Let us now enter the story of Elijah, a man hidden for years, but chosen for impact. His name was Elijah, not the prophet of Scripture, but a man of our time. A quiet man, ordinary on the outside, yet carrying an unease within him that never fully made sense until the silence came. From a young age, Elijah felt different, not broken, not strange, just misaligned with the pace of the world around him. While others found comfort in noise, he felt at peace in stillness. While his peers chased recognition, status, and belonging, Elijah often found himself more at home under the stars than in any room filled with people. And yet, there was no language for what he carried, no manual for the ache of feeling called, yet unqualified, set apart, yet unnoticed. At first, he resisted the pull to separate. He tried to do what was expected. He went where others went, spoke how others spoke, and did what seemed right in the eyes of the world. But the more he followed their rhythm, the more drained he became. Social events left him empty. Conversations felt performative. He began to sense something was wrong, not with them, but with the path he had chosen to follow. Then one evening, it all shifted. There was no dramatic moment, no thunder or flashing light, just a quiet whisper in his heart, one he couldn't shake. "Come away with me." It made no logical sense, but it echoed through his spirit so deeply, so repeatedly, that he finally listened. He cancelled plans. He stepped back from relationships. He stopped explaining himself and entered the quiet. And in that quiet, everything changed. God began to speak not in sentences, but in impressions, in a deep, slow rewiring of how Elijah saw himself. The silence became a classroom, a furnace, a garden, a cave, all at once. There, in his hiddenness, God exposed the wounds Elijah didn't know he carried. He revealed dreams Elijah had buried, and he began to breathe direction into a life that had been surviving on instinct. It wasn't easy. At times, Elijah questioned everything. The enemy came with whispers. "You're wasting your life. No one remembers you. You've lost too much." But every time he returned to that quiet place, something within him strengthened, not louder, but deeper. The kind of strength that doesn't need to announce itself because it knows where it's anchored. Months passed, then years, and when Elijah finally emerged from that season, he didn't come back seeking approval. He came back carrying an assignment. He spoke with clarity, led with compassion, worked with excellence. And those who once dismissed his absence began to recognize something had changed, not around him, but within him. He had not disappeared. He had been transformed. His success did not come quickly. It came quietly, not built on momentum, but on obedience, not propped up by charm, but sustained by conviction. Elijah became the kind of man who could be trusted with influence because he had been forged in places where no one was watching. That is the fruit of solitude. Not just inspiration, but transformation. And his story reminds us, the hidden seasons are not wasted. They are preparation for visibility with weight, for leadership with humility, for glory that points not to self but to God. So if you find yourself in a season like Elijah's where the world grows quiet and the crowd seems far away, do not panic. You are not forgotten. You are being forged. But perhaps most importantly, you are not alone. And in the next moment, we'll uncover how solitude, far from being weakness, is, in fact, the sacred place where God recharges, recenters, and reawakens the chosen. If you have been walking through a season of silence, take heart. You are not being buried. You are being planted. In a world that idolizes noise, speed, and recognition, solitude can feel like exile. But in God's kingdom, it is often the sanctuary where the deepest work is done. It's where your roots go deeper, not for the sake of stillness itself, but for the strength needed to carry what comes next. You are not being hidden because you are unworthy. You are being hidden because you are being prepared. The story of Elijah, the rhythm of Christ, and the stirring in your own soul, they all echo the same divine pattern. The chosen are always refined in secret before they are revealed in purpose. Solitude is not a pause in your destiny, it is the path to it. The silence you feel is not empty, it is holy ground. It is the place where heaven speaks without interruption. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "In the weight of glory, the door on which we have been knocking all our lives will open at last." That door is not behind a stage, a spotlight, or a social crowd. It often opens in the quiet places where your spirit is still enough to hear it creak. God does not rush those he loves. He refines them, carefully, tenderly, privately. So if this message finds you weary, wondering if you've missed your moment, know this. You are not behind. You are not overlooked. You are exactly where God needs you to be for what he is about to unfold. Lean into the silence, not as rejection, but as invitation, not as loss, but as preparation. Because when the time comes, and God calls your name out of the quiet, you will not step forward the same. You will walk in strength, forged in hiddenness. You will speak with wisdom, born of stillness. And you will carry glory not for your own name, but for his. This is the mystery of the quiet season. This is the power of sacred stillness. And this is the path of the chosen.